So it is currently 6 a.m. and we are in East Jerusalem. That was my hotel behind me. We landed yesterday at Ben Gurion International Airport, and that was an event in itself, where I ended up being having to stay for 7 hours and being interviewed 3 times. I've written an account of it. I've tried to be as neutral or as fair as possible. Neutral is probably the wrong word. And you guys can make your minds up for yourself about whether it was a necessary thing or an unnecessary thing. I'll link it wherever I share this video. This is a store. But yeah, so today's going to be a busy day. We've got a few things planned. We're going to go and visit the UN building, but before that we're going to Al-Aqsa, which is of course the 3rd holiest site in Islam, so super excited for that. And I've just been walking around for the last hour because I've always wanted to come to Palestine, Israel, and of course Jerusalem in particular. So I have been making the most of it, walking around without much purpose, but I guess that's the best way to find out about a place. We're about to go through Damascus Gate, which is the outer wall, on the outer wall of Old Jerusalem. And of course, given its name, you entered here and the route used to lead all the way to Damascus. In less grand condition now. So right now the path that we're actually doing is where Jesus carried his cross, and it's actually hallmarks around. There are signs saying where Jesus left Mary or saw Mary for the last time. This is where Jesus was crucified, etc. But we're currently following the same path that he took. So we're actually in the foundations of the Western Wall now. And behind me was just a security checkpoint, but just through there is the Western Wall. There it is, the Western Wall, one of the holiest sites in Judaism. You can see people praying right next to it, and there's a tradition of putting your prayers into the cracks of the wall, and lots of world leaders have come and done that. On my left is just the Western Wall, a bit closer. People praying. I think we're going to go and try and go to the Al-Aqsa Mosque first. So that was just a bit of a sideline performance, but this is the queue actually. So I don't think we'll be able to go to the Al-Aqsa Mosque today because of time. We have a meeting at 9 with the UN, so I don't think we'll be able to, but I'll definitely come here another day. But that's as close as we got. I'm not sure if you can just see the golden dome in the distance, but because of the long queue we won't be able to make it. And now we're going back towards the Western Wall. So I'll give you a sense of the whole courtyard. This is what's surrounding the Western Wall. Just there over there is Al-Aqsa. I'm not sure if you can make out any of the domes. And the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is in that direction. But there's lots of security around, but it looks pretty empty, except for the queue for Al-Aqsa is very long, so we'll have to do that another day. But I'm gonna go and try and get close to the Western Wall. So we're here, people are praying near the Western Wall. I'm gonna go and try and get close. And as I said, you can see the stuffed paper right in the cracks of the wall. It's quite emotional being here because it's one of the things that you always see, and you don't visit yourself actually visiting, but it's just really good and really overwhelming to be here. This is the separate route that Muslims can take to go to Al-Aqsa. The line is normally shorter, but there are tests, so they have to. You kind of have to recite verses from the Quran, etc. when you do go past through it. What I was showing you guys earlier, the garden cemetery over there, just above the bus. That is where people think Jesus may have been buried, or right back there, where the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is, and those are the two competing theories. And I think most people think it's actually the Sepulchre, partly because Jerusalem was a small town and it wouldn't make sense to have it so far out. But here are the walls of the old city. So we just had a briefing from a senior ranking official in the UN called Ray Dolphin. This is the building where the Green Line Agreement was actually signed, and the briefing was actually in the room where the Green Line Agreement was actually signed in 1967, which separated the Palestinian and Israeli territory, so that was cool. And it was an alarming series of statistics that we were given, some of them being that 40% of the West Bank is controlled by Palestine when it's officially all Palestinian territory. 1,601 people have been displaced because of home destructions. Israeli settlements are growing at the fastest rate that they've ever been growing, and Ray Dolphin himself actually said that he's never seen the situation worse. So it's not an amazing state of affairs here in the West Bank, but the situation is almost incomparable to what's happening in Gaza, where the most pressing issue is the water shortage, and apparently by 2020 their one aquifer will stop working, and so that's going to be almost insurmountable if something doesn't change. And apparently the cost of a new water purifier would be $500 million. So that's something that doesn't look likely to happen. So we are here at one of the main viewpoints of Jerusalem, and behind me is an absolutely stunning view of it. I don't know if you can see all of it. I'll try and get as many of these as possible. And right now the call to prayer is going on in the background. The main view here is actually of the Palestinian villages, and there's a very stark difference. And in the distance there is the Dome of the Rock. But I'll try and get better views. This is the Israeli government's idea of security. This is the blockade wall. Down there is Jericho Road. Jericho is the oldest city in the world, 4,000 years old. And before it used to take 5 minutes to go from Jericho to Jerusalem. And now it's a 40-minute drive for inhabitants of the city to get to Jericho. They have to go around this wall. And what's really strange about this is that the Jericho Road is 4,000 years old. People say that Jesus walks on it. This was the road that the Knights Templar used to protect pilgrims on. So it's part of a shared collective history. And so really seeing it, seeing that unifying thing being divided in such an abrasive and abrupt way is something that's quite hard to digest for me. And security concerns will be used as the reason, but does anything justify this when this is someone's house, this is a residence, and that's the view? When for thousands of years this was the link between the two cities. We were just actually stopped by a security patrol. So they patrol the wall sporadically, and they just asked us why we're here, what we're doing. So yeah, they're not too keen on tourists seeing this part of Israel. I think they're much keener on us seeing Tel Aviv, which is a very cosmopolitan city, but there are lots of structural impediments like this that really hinder a Palestinian's day-to-day life. And it's not just physical. There are lots of obstacles that we've learned about, part of a matrix of control. For example, getting a permit to build a piece of property is almost impossible. Enrolling your children into schools takes twice as long as for an Israeli. And those sort of things really erode. There's a car trying to get in. Those sort of things erode the sense of, citizenship, but also the will to do those things. So this is a typical Palestinian village on the eastern side of Jerusalem, which is a bit of a contrast from all the Israeli settlements. But if you look down there, you can see a lot of rubbish, and that's not because Palestinians have a worse sense of sanitation. It's because there's no garbage disposal. The official line from the Israeli government is that the roads are too difficult. The roads are too difficult for the garbage removal trucks to access, which I don't see much credence in. But it's such a shame, because if you look around, it's such a beautiful place. And one other disparity is that these black coolers are only present on some houses, and you know which houses, you can tell that Palestinians live in those houses, because the water coolers are an independent source of water, and the Israeli settlement houses, they don't really suffer from the same sort of shortages or inconsistency in supply that these do, which is again a shame. So we've stopped briefly for lunch, and then I think our tour is going to continue. So this is the ICAD tour, so the International Committee Against Housing Development, which is against the illegal Israeli settlements, illegal under international law, and they protest all the developments that the Israeli government seems to sanction every now and then. And sometimes they just turn a blind eye to the ones that they haven't sanctioned. So it's doing some important work, and they're taking us around Jerusalem, showing us some of the disparities in the way that Palestinians and Israelis live. But they also took us up to show us some of the historical context to the conflict, and how the sort of 48 border turned into the 67 border, which turned into the slightly more accepted idea that Israeli settlements are now a permanent fixture. And so I don't know how the two-state solution is compatible with that, but that's a separate conversation. What you see behind me is a demolished home, and it was demolished for punitive reasons. So the Israeli government decided that the person living there wasn't playing by the book, so his home should be destroyed. The sad fact about it is that while it was being destroyed, which was a multi-yeared process, he had to pay fines for construction work on his house, and he had to continue paying those fines until last year, when it was completely destroyed. And that's just a sad fact of life for many Palestinians. And over on that side are the Nakba homes. So Nakba was, of course, in 1948, when Palestinian land was first occupied by military forces. And some of those homes have been untouched since. They, of course, aren't inhabited because the Palestinians fled to various refugee camps or other parts of the West Bank. And some people in refugee camps across Syria, Jordan, still have the keys to those homes, and they've been passed on from grandfather to father to son, etc. And they still have them. Just a very sad fact of life. So behind me is Hebrew University, and this is the outskirts of Jerusalem, and that is something called a settlement road. And so what a settlement road is it's only accessible to people who live in settlements. So we actually had to take a really winding route so the Palestinians who live in East Jerusalem would have to take to get up here to the Hebrew University or anything that's around. Whereas if you're lucky enough to live in a settlement, it's 15 minutes from Jerusalem to the nearest settlement. It's just one of the other manifestations of inequality. Just finished two talks. First was at the Van Leer Institute, which is a social research leftist think tank. And we just had a meeting with a member of the Israeli Labour Party, a youth member of the Israeli Labour Party. And it was really interesting, both of them. So first it was Mayor Margalit, who was a social researcher, but he used to be a councilman on the Jerusalem municipality, and he was talking about really interesting things. For example, the demographic changes and how the Israeli government is sort of combating what they perceive to be a threat in the very near future of Palestinians essentially outnumbering them in Jerusalem itself, and also the vast inequalities in the distribution of resources, water, etc. And it was really interesting to get the point of view of a member of the Labour Party from Israel, because I understand that it gets a lot of flack from the international community for not being left enough. But it was interesting to see a youth perspective. And she was still adamant that a two-state solution was the only way, whereas more and more we hear about the one person, one vote, and how Israel, the only way there's going to be peace is there's going to have to be a one-state solution. But it was really interesting to get her perspective. And there is a sunset happening right now. You can see Al-Aqsa in the background, I hope, which is one of the nice things. We're right now based in a Palestinian neighborhood, which happens to be on a green line, on the green line, not that there are multiple, which was of course the 67 border. And now we're about to head to Ramallah, where we're going to have dinner with a Fatah politician. So Fatah being the left party of Palestine, or the Palestinian territories, and they do have a government in the West Bank. So we just came back from hearing Abdullah speak, who was the interim president of Palestine, and he had a lot of very inspiring things to say, overall message being that he's here to stay, despite how difficult his life may be. And he did allude to the fact that it may get more difficult given Trump. He said that he's here to stay, and it was a very positive and lifting message to end the day on, because we have seen some very stark realities, or heard from some people who have experienced some very stark realities today. Tomorrow we're going to go to a refugee camp, so that'll be in the next video. And similarly, it's going to be there are going to be lots of things I do, and so hopefully you found this one interesting, and I'll keep you posted with the next few.